Welcome to the Work, Wealth, and Travel podcast. I'm your host, Nicole, and this podcast is your guide to start creating a lifestyle by design. From entrepreneurship, money and finance, taxes and residencies, and everything in between, this show highlights the nuances of a true global citizen lifestyle. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Work, Wealth, and Travel podcast. I am very much so looking forward to today's episode. And Adi, thank you for being here today. Before we dive into all of the things, global travel with a child, financial freedom, I'd love to hear a little bit more about yourself, your story, where you started, and how you started building this lifestyle for yourself.
Awesome. Yeah. Hey, Nicole. First of all, I'd love to say that the name work, wealth, and travel is definitely those are three very intentional words that I think we live by as a family. So it's awesome to be able to share kind of the unique lifestyle that we've created, and it's really been about those three things. It's like work, what we've done in the States, what we're currently doing now, and then how we've built our wealth to not yet achieve financial independence, but be clearly on a path where we can live anywhere we want and live the lifestyle that we want.
Yes, I love that. Those are things that I feel like a lot of people in this space and really global citizens who have left their home countries and are seeking or have a unique lifestyle abroad can really resonate with those three words. So thank you for that. So yeah, I would love to hear. So you mentioned the US, which is, I guess, is a little bit of a hint as to where you started your journey. But what did that look like when you were in the US alone with your partner? Where did the idea to start working toward that financial independence and traveling the globe and leaving the US behind come from?
So let's see, it definitely started. So we're both from New York City. We were raised in New York City, kind of in the hustle of it all. Went to school there, eventually went to college and university there. So we were like full on New York City mode, which, if you know, is just like work, build for the future, build your careers, just based on the expenses and the lifestyle and everything we grew up around. So both of our families that's where we grew up. We're quite an international family. So my wife's parents are from the Dominican Republic and also from Italy. So that comes in later on into our story, more so now as we build passports and citizenships. And my parents, my mom is originally from Chile. So we're that's part of our story right now as we're stacking passports, if you will. But we grew up in New York, went to school there, eventually moved to the West Coast, out to Washington State, where we started working. And I think it's just sometimes comes natural to some people to, once you're earning and once you have a career and a profession, to either maximize on how you're using your money from a savings and investing potential. And some people just like to spend 100% or more of what they earn. So we're definitely in the first group where I was in my mid to early, probably mid 20s. And I was just hey, let's live below our means, put this money to use. And I think we'll be really happy in 5 years that we took this approach to our finances.
I love that. I'm curious, what year was that?
What year was that? That would have been 2018, 17, 18, something like that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's a great time frame because I remember I was, getting into financial independence and the whole FIRE movement, and nobody had any idea what that was. And that was right before I moved to Shenzhen, where you are actually right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that was around a similar time frame, like 2016-ish, 2015 to like 2017. And it was really just, from what I saw, starting to become more talked about online with, like Mad Scientist and all
Right.
of those, Curry Cracker and like all of those people who I would totally just nerd out. And so it's funny because that is actually, on a personal note, the reason that I moved to China. And it sounds like you did something similar, but within the US, where it's like, you know what, it can be a reality to have your finances go so much further in the future, but you have to start planning that now. And so the way that I did it was I kind of geo arbitraged my life and still had a really high, good paying job in Canada, and then also took on a somewhat decent paying job in China. So I had two jobs and I was living in China, which is definitely, I mean, it's gone up since, but definitely was not the price of anywhere near living in Canada at the time. And so I was just like, you know what, this is all new to me, but I'm just gonna run from Canada and go to China and like see what happens. And then I never have lived in Canada again. And so I love your story because it sounds similar. So what did that journey look like for you within the US?
So, and you're like, I've got to jog my memory, right? Because so much has happened just in the last like year and a half. So this all went down. Let's see, that would have been like 6, maybe 7 years ago. Um, so yeah, we moved to the West Coast, started earning. Prior to that, though, I had traveled like extensively internationally, traveled through parts of the Middle East, traveled through Europe, and so if you ever speak to my wife, she'll say that in my very early 20s, probably like 2021, I always had told her, hey, like I want to live abroad. Like we need to find a way like long term to design our life. And this is 8 to 9 years before having our son. We need to live abroad because we come from international families, but just the lifestyle. I was just like, I need something different. Like quality of life is just higher in other places. And I'd much rather, like work to live over living to work. So that I think that was like the foundational kind of idea that I've always like not obsessed over, but had a passion to how can we design our life abroad. And then, things just happened with work opportunities taking us to the West Coast. Um, and it was just, hey, if we are earning this amount and we have this kind of career trajectory for the next 5 years, how do we keep our living expenses at, I would say, 30% of our total income and pay off any university debt, which is really common in the US. And then once that debt was paid off, it was just how do we invest all of this and get abroad?
And so for you and your wife, what did investing look like in the US so that you could then leverage that money to live elsewhere?
Well, I mean, and here's I think just a general issue with growing up, probably in most Western countries, but no one teaches you any of this, right? Like no one teaches you where to park your money, where to put your savings, like how to invest for your future. Especially in the U.S., a lot of it is just like, hey, take on more and more debt for college and credit cards and pretty much everything. But we just learned along the way, and it became a matter of like index funds and learning a lot from the FIRE movement. So that's really where we use like Vanguard, like low cost index funds, and then built that up over a period of time. And then we had COVID and just various opportunities that came up with investing, with real estate, with some lending. So it's pretty diverse at this point. I wouldn't say that we take like a strictly FIRE, like lock up your money in a 401k or IRA and just invest in index funds, for until you hit multiple seven figures. Um, I know it's a positive approach that works for some people. It's just not ideal for our lifestyle and wanting to live life well before we can take money out of those accounts, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. I mean, if you have it locked up, it's not like after a 5 year period, you're going to have a bunch more in there. It definitely takes some time to accumulate. Um, So that's really interesting to hear, that you have various different investments within the US that I'm sure produce you somewhat good enough yields where you can, live an amazing lifestyle abroad. So, what does your lifestyle look like today in terms of travel, in terms of, I know that you have a young son. So, I'm curious what that looks like of traveling with a child and getting into that.
Yeah, so we had our son. So from the West Coast, we then moved to and we're working in Scottsdale, Arizona, and loved it. Like maximized on the lifestyle of being in the Southwest. I'm an avid climber, hiker. We just always took every opportunity to be outside and explore. And then 2021, the world stopped. We were both working remotely from Arizona. So it's kind of a shock to our system, but still like maximize travel, hit up a bunch of national parks. I think, the restrictions were a lot different in Arizona than most parts of the world and the country for sure. And then we had our son kind of in the midst of all that. So in June 2021, he was born, and 6 months later, still at the tail end of restrictions and everything that was going on, kind of the second wave, we were just like, okay, this is it. It's we've got to get out or this is over. And he was 6 months old and we moved to Costa Rica.
I love that. That's so cool. I love that you have such an unconventional way of thinking for most Americans. You have a very young newborn son, and I think most people are going to think, okay, now our life is here. We aren't going to be traveling for probably at least 5, if not 10 years. And you're like, you know what? We have a newborn and we're just going to go live in Costa Rica.
Totally. We did it, but it was, it's not from the standpoint of like, hey, we're in, six figures worth of debt and let's just go down there for a month or two, which is funny because we ran into quite a few, like Canadian couples doing the same, but they were clearly only doing it for like a month or two during their, like parental leave after having a child. And we were down there and we were just like, nope, like we've got this, we're going to figure it out, but we're moving down here long term. um, so essentially before that, we just like sold any of our larger items, like our Jeep, and, put a couple things in storage, primarily with family. But we moved down to Costa Rica with 3 suitcases, smaller size suitcases, if you will. And, yep, ended up in like the Guanacaste kind of Tamarindo area and then went from there. So, I'll let you ask your questions, but that's pretty much only where the story began, and there's a lot more to it.
Okay, I 100% want to dive into the rest of that, but I want to take a quick pause just on what you mentioned there because one of the biggest questions that I get asked a lot from those looking to live a more global lifestyle is what do you do about family? Are they supportive? Are they maybe a little bit less so? So, what did that look like for yourself and your wife?
I think that's such a unique question to anyone that asks. Like every family is different, right? So for our family, I think initially they were just like, okay, like wow, be safe. But also, we just have always had this kind of this dream and passion to make it happen, and they know how kind of unconventional we are in everything we've done, kind of even prior to. So it was just like, okay, Costa Rica, like I hope it works out. We'll come visit you, and we're just kind of independent in that sense. We're just like, okay, cool. Like we'd rather hang out with you guys like at the beach in Costa Rica than, fly into San Francisco airport and kind of all meet up there. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's
that's a
unique.
really interesting answer because I kind of feel like my answer would be similar where I think it's a certain type of person. And of course, not everybody who lives abroad is this type of person, but I think a lot of the people who leave and then don't really ever come back for the long term are people who their families know that they're very independent and that they're going to figure things out on their own and they can handle it. And, I love my family, but I was never too attached to them to the point of like, I need to live in the same province or in the same city or, even in the same country. And I think that starts from a young age, at least it did for me, where I think when I told my parents, like, hey, I'm moving to China, and then just never came back, I don't think it was like the biggest world shock.
Right. And we were in our early 20s too, like, and just left. I mean, even prior to that, I like set up a study abroad situation in Europe, which involved also like trips to the Middle East. And that was all done like on my own. Like my parents had no idea that was gonna happen. It was just like, hey, I got accepted. I leave in 2 weeks. So I think they were like they've adapted to my like ability to live that type of lifestyle and thrive in that way. So yeah, they've been dealing with that for a long time. I think it was a little bit different having a grandchild kind of in the mix. But they trusted us and they knew we were in a position also financially where, hey, like, I hope it works out. And if not, you can always come back here and navigate living in the US again.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so I don't want to hold you up from continuing the rest of the story. So you said that was Costa Rica was really only the beginning of it. So please share the rest.
Yeah. So I'll say when my son was a month old, we started traveling all around the US. So we were in Arizona, but we spent a bunch of time at the beach in Southern California and in San Diego, then Washington State. Then we did a kind of hiking summer trip in the mountains in Colorado, and that for us was just like, hey, we can totally handle like traveling with a child, and we actually thrive in that environment. So then it was Costa Rica. So we ended up in Costa Rica. Plan was to stay abroad long term, and we could talk about what that looks like work wise and where we are now. But started in Costa Rica, and then I'll go down the list. But we spent 3.5 months in different parts of Costa Rica. So pretty much 1 month long Airbnbs in most places that we've stayed. Sometimes we've extended it to like 2 or 3 months if we really like an area. But we did 3 different spots in Costa Rica: beach, mountains, cloud forest, and more. Then we were just like, hey, we really love this lifestyle. There's much more to Central and South America than Costa Rica. Let's go to Colombia. So then we ended up in Medellin and spent 3 months in Colombia, then about 2.5 months in Ecuador. Going through the list. Let's see. Costa Rica, Colombia, Ecuador, Argentina, Uruguay, and then from there with other trips to Chile. I almost have to ask my wife where else we've been, but that's Mexico. Came back to visit family in Arizona for a couple of months, so that they got their share of grandchild time. And then during that time, we had already planned and knew that we were going to spend summertime in the Canary Islands and in Barcelona, trip to Morocco, and then from there, now we spend our time in Hong Kong and Shenzhen and this greater Bay Area in Asia. So that was the last 2 years.
Are you interested in becoming a global citizen and living a lifestyle by design in a country that aligns with you? If this is a lifestyle that you're seeking to create, we can help. Whether it be multiple residencies, citizenships, bank accounts, trust or company formations, we operate in 30 plus of the most tax-friendly jurisdictions around the globe to get you structured properly. Head to the link in the show notes to learn more and to get your global citizen journey underway today.
I love that. What amazing travels. And I love the fact that you're not limited by thinking, we have to be in one place or even in one place longer term, like 6 months to a year with a child. So, what were some of the challenges, the struggles that I'm sure you encountered traveling with a young child of that age?
Oh man, I think it gets initially it was pretty easy because very young children end up sleeping a lot of the time, and or we'd get on the plane and our little guy was and continues to be healthily breastfed, so that's always helped on a plane. But he would just knock out, and then 4 hours later when we arrived, he was awake, and we would just navigate getting through an airport. And I have to say, the experience, you almost know the vibe of a country when you get into like customs and you deal with security and getting through and navigating an airport, because the moment we hit Latin America, Costa Rica, Colombia, literally everywhere, we were always, because we had a baby, just like sent to the front of the line, or we were put on like the VIP line where, everyone else was kind of like very older in age. When we came back to the US after our time in Mexico, that was not the case. It was like, no, stand in this line for an hour and a half with a young child. So that was like a shock to our system. We were like, oh my God, we don't get VIP treatment for traveling with a baby. So that puts it in perspective. But it was super easy in the beginning, and then as my son just got older and more independent, he now just runs up and down the aisle like giving people high fives, and he makes it a game, which is pretty fun.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. And it's so interesting to hear your first person perspective of the differences between, like what you said about the US versus Central and South America. I would have no idea about that, but that's so interesting. And I think that really does go to show, a little bit of what's ingrained in their culture.
Oh my God. Like we hit the Atlanta airport and we were like, what is going on? Why is everyone so intense right now? And again, with a child, like, why isn't everyone saying hi to our son and like letting us pass through so we don't have to stand here for 3 hours?
So fascinating. Really fascinating. Okay, so um I guess, are there any other challenges that you have really faced as he's gotten older, or would you say, really that, I guess, in terms of cultural, it was a big one for you?
Yeah, just that cultural experience of coming back for a couple of months. But it was nice knowing that, hey, like our lives and our lifestyle is totally abroad. So we knew we were leaving again.
Yeah.
Um, no, I think with our child, it's just if they're like happy, healthy, and thriving, it's just like taking a trip. Like we've designed our life and lifestyle where it's not like, hey, we need to drop him off at daycare and then go work our office jobs or even work remote from home, but he has to be, away from us. It was like, if I really think back on it, this was years in the making, right? To design a lifestyle where we were able to travel with him for well over a year and a half, and now thrive and live abroad in Asia, where he's going to a kindergarten and learning his third language. So, I mean, I would just say, thankfully, no real issues to navigate. But you do have to get creative, right? Like he's seen doctors for certain things in different countries. Thankfully, not often, but if your child gets a fever and you're in a foreign country, like you have to know how to navigate that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even I have to know how to navigate that. I've been
Right.
to many doctors in many different countries. Um, okay, so I'm curious, and this is always a question that I have whenever I have a parent or parents on who have younger kids. What does the trajectory of you traveling and his education in, the short to even long-term future look like? I know right now he's in kindergarten in China. Is is the plan to, be longer term places now with him, or will you kind of just bop around to countries in the future and have a different style of education? Is that something that you've looked into? I'm very curious about this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. So we originally, it was prior prior to kind of choosing the spot where we are, a little bit more long term, it was 2-3 months in different areas. And we were with him. So that experience was just like all of us together. My wife speaks to him in Spanish. I speak to him in English. So he's very clearly bilingual. And our intention was always like for his life to just expose him to culture and various countries and definitely languages. So my wife has always been in education, and she had the long-term goal of being in international education on different levels. So professionally, the opportunity came up to move all the way to this side of Asia for some great opportunities in international schools. And that's what we've been doing for the last 6 months here. So these are extremely just really wonderful schools, like incredible private schools. So that was always our long-term goal for at least this phase of our lives, to take that approach and then sustainably have our son attend international schools. In the future, probably do some world schooling as we travel to different places, maybe like a gap year of homeschooling. But I think on the educational front, he'll have a really, really unique experience that I hope is a lot better than my experience growing up.
Yeah, I completely can agree with that. I think there are, looking back at my education, a very standard government education in a Western country, it was really all that I knew at the time, as we all really only knew that. But now, especially in recent years since lockdown, there's been so many interesting and unique educational opportunities brought to light for me, at least, and I think for many others, like world schooling that you mentioned, or unschooling.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I mentioned this to you before as well. I see it and I'm just like, I either want a kid just so that I can take part in this education, or to even just do it myself. I had an expert on in the world schooling space that was probably about a year ago, and what she was saying, and the trips and what these kids are learning around the globe, it was just like, oh my gosh, this is exactly why I travel, because I want to learn all of these things. And history becomes so much more fascinating when you're actually in the place where it happened, versus when you're sitting at a desk in Canada or the US or wherever you were born, same town. It's a lot less interesting sitting from that desk versus, we were in Sarajevo, and you see the corner where Franz Ferdinand was shot and killed. And it's just like, oh my gosh, this is literally where it happened. And so I I don't know what the future will look like for us, but I think that that is such a fascinating way to learn. And then, of course, you have to incorporate different areas and subjects into that, but so much more hands on and practical. And then there's so many areas of education that are just so completely useless, quite honestly, and in my opinion, are made for building employees and really put there for a certain purpose by governments.
I totally agree. It's I mean, my experience, I was bored in school, and then I realized it's in a certain sense kind of like glorified babysitting. And in that babysitting, you're essentially, you're being told by other people kind of what's a good profession, what you should do. And then in the US, the end result for a lot of people ends up being choosing a career, either for the purpose of like, hey, I'm just going to do this for the money, or you choose a career, but end up also with a ton of debt that really kind of traps you. And I know people that have reached out to me, many, many people like 30s, 40s. They're like, I love what you're doing, the lifestyle, what you're doing for your family, but I have like a $2,000 a month student loan payment. And it's just like, okay, well, you've got that and a mortgage and all these other stuff, like it becomes a much more difficult situation to navigate. So yeah, there's that. There's so many layers to it, but I think for me, just like you, I just want to experience incredible things, never stop learning, and then model that for my son. And he already, in my opinion, he's already kind of like taken that full on in stride. So like I said, he's fluent Spanish, English in within a matter of like 5, almost 6 months of being here. Um, Understands, I would say, 95% of Mandarin and clearly responds at a high level.
That's so cool. That's amazing. I mean, I want to be your son. Like, who doesn't? I think that's so cool. I love what you guys are doing. So, now I guess, is there anything that we should touch on before moving on from the topic of, travel and travel with a child and education?
I think when it comes to like traveling and traveling with a child, like, of course, there are, some YouTubers and other stuff, but there's no like clear person that we knew in our lives that did anything remotely close to what we've done over the past couple of years. So it's just about like just going for it and realizing that like we're all capable of navigating like travel, where to go. Like all it requires is some research and maybe some late nights, like looking up Airbnbs and the absolute best neighborhoods to be in, especially when you're, navigating traveling through Central South America. But the experiences are incredible. Like we know large cities, we know Buenos Aires, having living there for 5 months. We know it kind of like the back of our hands. We also know what an amazing geo-arbitrage experience it was for us during that time. Um, but we also know how amazing it is to go from there and then travel through Patagonia for weeks at a time. So these are experiences we could have never had if we were waiting for someone to kind of give us the guide on how to do it.
Yeah, I totally agree. You really just have to jump in with both feet and have to really have the mindset of, I am going to figure this out and it's going to work out for me because it literally has to. So,
Yeah.
on you mentioning that last note there, geo arbitrage, please explain to me for anybody listening, what is geo arbitrage and how can you really take advantage of it? Because I think that, the audience listening is global, but a large percentage American. And I know geo arbitrage is on the rise, and I think it's becoming more mainstream, I guess, if that's the right word. But I think that not enough people still realize how beneficial it can be. And also, until you really leave the US, Canada, even Mexico in some places is getting pricier now, like until you really take that 6-7 hour flight elsewhere, that's when you really realize, like, oh my gosh, my money can go so much further once I'm outside of these countries.
Yeah, it's honestly incredible. If you're, and I've seen this and this, a lot of people talk about this on X or other platforms, but it's if you're earning in US dollars, which is, I mean, we can go down the rabbit hole with that, but overall, compared to other, foreign exchanges and currencies, it's a strong currency. But if you're earning in US dollars and then going to another country and spending in their currency based on exchanges, or even spending in dollars but based on cost of living, the gap can be so large, right? So our expenses were only, and everyone knows this that's living in the US, it's just like with inflation and just everything, like expenses, their monthly expenses have gone up tremendously over the last 2 to 3 years. And with geo arbitrage, our monthly expenses have gone down tremendously just by taking advantage of travel, currency exchanges. And in my opinion, even for the dollar to dollar amount, I would rather in many places, lifestyle and the experiences in those places over spending it at Chipotle in the US.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I always say the same thing, even if it was a similar price point to live in Buenos Aires versus Dallas, Texas, well, I would still probably rather live in Argentina. The cost is a great benefit, but it also really has to stem from the lifestyle as well. You really have to want this lifestyle. Not everybody does. I have a feeling if you're listening, you probably are interested in getting out of, the quote unquote rat race, but not everybody wants that. And so for some people, it's not going to make sense. Maybe paying a lot more is really the lifestyle that works, which is totally fine. And it's really based on, I believe, lifestyle first, what you are looking for, what that lifestyle design is. And then from there, it's like, okay, is geo arbitrage something that makes sense? Well, then that's just an amazing cherry on top of the cake, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a matter of like, honestly, our passion when we first started was, hey, let's scope the world for home bases. And the cost of living is definitely a factor in that, but it's not what drives us. Like, we want to live in incredible places all over the world, which we can get into our goal for passports and all of that. But it's about like really, really, really enjoying your quality of life. And if it's cheaper and less expensive than back home, and if you've earned and saved in a stronger currency, it just it makes the experience that much better.
Yeah, I totally agree. Okay, so on that topic, what I was going to ask you last was about the passport portfolio that you are building up. So, but I'm also very curious as well because I have some for me, so I'm curious what yours look like in terms of potential bases in the future. The countries that you've been to that you could really see yourself living there, and I'm happy to share mine afterward as well. But I'm curious what that looks like for you, along with the passport portfolio, if that comes into play for naturalization in some of these countries and what that looks like.
Yeah, so I'm always learning about this and reaching out to people like you for information or blind spots that I have in our overall kind of game plan. Because I definitely am a firm believer. It's like you don't know what you don't know. So in learning about all of this and then just exploring, hey, like we don't want to, if we settle in a place, if it's for work, the nice thing about working internationally is that a lot of the visa process and permitting and like residency and all that's handled, but that's only during your time of work. So we're definitely fortunate. I mean, that's what allows us to be in Asia and comfortably say, hey, we will probably be in Asia for another couple years, if not more longer term. So that's that part of it. But then throughout this process of traveling, we just got to thinking, hey, my mom is originally from South America, from Chile. Maybe there's an opportunity to get a passport there. My wife's mom is from the Dominican Republic. Maybe there's an opportunity there. And then my wife's father is originally from, not him, but his family and his lineage is from Italy. So then we started looking into passports by descent for that side of things. And eventually it became, hey, how do we give our son as many passports as possible to give him incredible opportunities? So yeah, so that's led to Dominican passports, in the process of Chilean by descent, and very deep in the process of Italian passports by descent.
Amazing. I love that. And that's exactly where I always tell clients to start is descent. It's not always going to be the fastest way, but it is going to be one of the more streamlined ways where you can be guaranteed in, it might be 9 months or it might be 5 years, but depends a lot on the country. But, at some point you will be able to hold that passport, that citizenship in your hand. So I love that you guys started there, and it's amazing that you both have, mixed backgrounds where you have various different passport options available to you, and then you can pass those down to your son as well.
Yeah,
Well,
so
this is,
we
uh-huh.
yeah, I'll go in. So I would say kind of in the evolution of that, we started looking into like what it means to get a European passport and the benefits and or South America. But then you clearly realize like a lot of these programs, some of them require, let's say by investment, like 500,000 or more, um, which we definitely were very, very interested in exploring. But then it was like, well, wait, maybe there's an option of doing this for substantially less money and less capital instead of kind of parking our capital in this country. And then that led us kind of down the rabbit hole of descent. So all of this was just kind of learned experience of like, hey, let's explore our lineage and see what happens.
Yeah, I love that you really piece that together. And like I said, very blessed, I would say, from yourself and your wife that you do have various different backgrounds in both of your lineages, because I speak to some clients and, their whole lineage is from one country as far back as 4 or 5 generations. And a lot of countries, it will not even go back that far, unfortunately. So,
Yep.
it's definitely not an option available to everybody, but if it is, I love that that's something that you initially explored before shelling out. Yeah, like anywhere from 1 to 500K, I would say is pretty standard.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it just became, hey, like, wouldn't it be great to get a Latin American passport? And then we realized, like, there's the whole like, I believe it's called like Mercosur.
Mercosur, yeah.
Yeah, so then it's just like that opens up the door to most of South America for us and the potential of maybe ending up in Patagonia one day, which could very well be a reality. Or Europe, and then just give us options there. And then there's taxes and other things that we navigate through and have a pretty clear game plan on. But that might be for a separate podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there's quite a bit to that as well.
Yeah.
But I do really want to ask you, because I'm completely curious, where have been some of the places that you have lived and traveled to that you could see yourself setting up a potential home base in the future?
I've said Patagonia multiple times, so I'll go back to that. Patagonia, Bariloche, Argentina has a place in my heart just for its beauty, the seasons, and the incredible cultural experience that I had there. So Patagonia, definitely there. Hard to beat some beaches that we've been to further up even in Costa Rica. I know like cost of living, and there were certain reasons why we didn't want to settle in Costa Rica long term when we first got there, but beach life in Costa Rica or Panama was a bit hard to beat. Patagonia. We spent a summer on the Canary Islands, so that's an option. This summer we'll go back to northern Spain, Portugal, and then we want to go to the Azores, the islands of Portugal. So we were just in Bali. It's so hard to say, but we talk about this on a regular basis. It's like probably having a base in South America. I'm gonna go with Patagonia for that answer. Having a base in Europe, Spain, Portugal, or Italy, and then spending a lot of time in Asia, where we really like Thailand and some of the small islands off the coast of Bali.
Yeah, I love that. Of course, we've both lived in Shenzhen, so China, and of course, Shenzhen in specific has a place in my heart. But you said it, Thailand. There's just something about Thailand. I mean, it's my favorite, one of my two favorite cuisines in the world. So definitely that. But there's just something about the beauty of Thailand that I always go back to. And so, I agree. I think my partner and I, we will probably end up having some sort of base somewhere in Asia. And then, of course, probably a few different ones in Latin America for various different reasons. And I love that you loved Argentina. I think for me, it is Peru. Peru is
Love
my
it.
Argentina. I love the food, the people, the landscapes, the scenery, the towns, like just everything. Peru was, the
Love
most
it.
stunning thing for
Yeah,
us.
and that's a beauty of continuing to live this lifestyle long term. It's just realizing like even if you spend a year and a half or 2 years full on traveling, you can't hit everywhere, right? You still only see like a small portion of what's out there. Maybe the first time around you're doing more places that are like recommended on blogs or something like that, which I feel like we didn't do necessarily. Um, but you just don't know like where the best places even locals know about, right? That just have been undiscovered. So yeah, that's us. But I think you're totally right. Like Thailand, we're gonna take a trip really, really soon to Chiang Mai and other parts of Thailand. We spent a lot of time at the beaches, but my wife loves it. Like of everywhere we've been in Asia, outside of this kind of the Bay Area of Shenzhen, Hong Kong, Thailand keeps coming up in our conversations from her.
Yeah, me too. I love Thailand. My partner loves the Philippines, but I'm just like, "Ugh, Thailand and Malaysia, but there's so many beautiful countries in Asia. It's hard to choose. Well, thank you for being here. It's been a really interesting conversation. So where can the listeners find you online?
So online, I started posting kind of about our journey from the Canary Islands. That was like 7, maybe 8 months ago. So pretty much just on X at Fam and Fire. You can find us, kind of follow the daily whereabouts of where we are. I do post a lot about different countries, travel, our approach to passports, and then I will certainly be doing a lot more of that. I personally feel like it's changed our lives in such an incredible way, but there are a ton of families, and I get so many messages like, hey, how are you doing this? Where should we go? How do we stack passports? So that's going to be the approach to that page and what we share. But yeah, X at Fam and Fire, and just follow along.
Awesome. I love that. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing everything that you've shared today. And don't forget to check out the X. The link will be linked in the show notes below.
Awesome. Thank you, Nicole.
You've just listened to the Work, Wealth, and Travel podcast. If anything from this episode resonated with you, I would appreciate if you share this podcast on your socials. And of course, be sure to tag me. And don't forget to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for joining me on this global citizen journey, and I'll see you in the next episode.